information, but we're lacking the clarity that we need, especially when it comes to veganism or health and the direction that we want to take with that side. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to start off with making this more conversational. So instead of me just harping on for whatever, forever, because I could harp on forever, believe me. Instead, I wanted to make tonight more about you and about what it is that you're wanting to most get out of tonight. And so I'd like to share some stories, and I'd like to share some nutrition, some how-to, some of the technical stuff as well. So hopefully some stories can inspire you, and hopefully some technical information about the how-to that you can take away from tonight and you can actually use in your life, and you can use in your activism and your events that you're working with Dom here with. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to first just share a quick little story with you about how I got involved in plant-based nutrition and veganism. And it wasn't a quick switch for me, because as a personal trainer, I think my journey started out when I was 19, and I just come out of this breakup. I wasn't dealing with it well. My heart was all over the table and I wasn't feeling very good. And I walked into a gym. It was Les Mills on Cashel Street, and there were all these buff people walking around, loud music playing, and it was this really foreign environment I didn't feel comfortable in. And I had an appointment with a personal trainer, and I sat down with the trainer. He looks at me and he says, "Oh, what do you want to achieve?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I want to look like Brad Pitt in the movie Fight Club." Has any of you guys seen that movie? Yeah. So Brad Pitt's got the six-pack. He didn't get it vegan, but at the time that was when my journey started. And so my trainer looked at me and he said, "Well, if you want to achieve that, you got to commit to working your ass off over the next 6 months." And so part of my journey was first of all getting out of my own way, and it was full of a lot of challenges along the way. And so some of those challenges were when I first walked into the gym, my trainer said, "We're going to do some squats." Put a bar on my back, I did a squat. He said, "Lean back further." I leaned back, the bar went flying halfway across the room. There were people that came running up asking if I was okay, almost badly injured myself. That was pretty much my first session. I remember he had a talk with me about nutrition, and this was back quite a number of years ago. We're talking 2006 or so, and we had this conversation about nutrition, and he told me all the stuff that I had to go back and unlearn over the years after preaching this stuff to clients. And we've all heard of, if we've ever worked with a personal trainer, or we've been on YouTube and we followed some sort of fitness celebrity, we know that they're talking about you have to eat heaps of meat, you have to eat heaps of dairy, you have to get your protein shakes in, you have to do all this sort of stuff. And so I was preaching this stuff for years. And so what I had to do is at some point, I had to put my ego aside and put that in check. And I had to actually listen to people who are getting real world results on a plant-based nutrition diet, which we'll get into in just a second. But other than that, after my trainer had this chat with me at the table, and he's talking about nutrition and what I need to eat, and he said, "You gotta make sure that you fry up a big slab of meat in the morning," and all this stuff. And it was actually discomforting for me to have to adjust to that type of nutrition. And the first time I walked into the supermarket after having a chat with my trainer, I was doing loops because I was confused. I was picking up labels. I didn't know how to read them. I didn't know what to eat, because what most of us have been raised with eating is pretty similar. Most of us, the traditional Kiwi diet, unless you're from the United Kingdom, then the traditional Kiwi diet, most of it for us is pretty much the same. Wheat Bix or some sort of cereal in the morning. It was some sort of sandwich if you're at high school, and then it was some sort of pasta with some meat, and if it didn't have meat in it, there was something wrong with it. And then if it was dinner time, then it would be some sort of meat, 3 veg, and that sort of thing. And so what a lot of us had to do along the way, and I'm sort of preaching the choir here with you guys, but we all had to learn different ways of eating. And so for me, it was a little bit more challenging when I made the shift to plant-based nutrition. And the reason being is because I started as a personal trainer about a year from joining the gym. 6 months in, I got the six-pack. I was still looking around thinking, where's my girlfriend? I thought automatically I'd get a new girlfriend and get a six-pack. A little bit delusional at the time, but hey. And a year from joining the gym, I was walking off a stage covered in orange paint, dripping with sweat, blowing my nose because I had man flu at the time, which was a lot more terrible than regular flu. And also, I realized as I was holding this plastic trophy, that it was the first time I'd ever achieved something I really set my mind to. And so that set the belief that I could really achieve anything. And so that paved the way for the rest of my career as a personal trainer in the fitness industry. And so part of what I prided myself on was giving high quality advice to people who are going to use that advice to change their life, whether it be change their eating habits, change their exercise habits, change their mindset. Except for a good number of years, it wasn't until over about 5.5 years ago, I found myself in Perth, Australia. There was a big raw vegan movement at the time. I think it's still really big there. Has anybody been to Perth, Australia? Any of you guys been to Perth, Western Australia? No? Anybody been to Australia? Okay, we just don't go across that side. Yeah.
It's a long way.
It's a long way, yeah. So I found myself in Perth, Australia, and there was a big raw vegan movement going on, and I'd heard about these vegan bodybuilders, Michelle and David Nazaroff, and these guys are winning national level bodybuilding competitions, which is quite a big feat. And at the time I was eating a lot of animal products. Let's not even go there with how much, but my digestive system was shot. I was tired all the time. I was lethargic. I would get up in the morning and already feel tired. It wouldn't just be waking up and then eating a meal and feeling tired. It was just literally the food was still digesting from the night before because I was so full of it. Probably more ways than one at the time. Still preaching to clients about how they need to eat all this protein and these types of things. So I realized I was feeling so bad one day. I woke up in the morning and this is kind of embarrassing because I got on the toilet and I was trying to squeeze one out and it wasn't happening. And a lot of us know somebody like that where their bowel movements are not happening because they're eating so much animal products that they're not getting the fiber in the water so that their digestive system actually functions optimally. And so not only was my bowels not working, I was sluggish, tired, I had brain fog all the time. And so I thought to myself that morning, I thought, there's got to be a better way. And so I heard about these guys, these bodybuilders. I'd heard about them for 6 months and I just kept pulling it off. It's just, they're taking supplements, they're taking steroids. I just kept making excuses. I was living in cognitive dissonance, and a lot of us experience this with people, right? Like when we're on the street or when I'm with clients, a lot of my clients who come to me at first, they're eating a regular Kiwi diet, which involves animal products. And so we're dealing with that cognitive dissonance, and so I was really knee deep in that at the time. And so a lot of times when I catch up with somebody initially who's interested in plant-based nutrition, or they're not interested at all, and they just figure out, they realize somehow that that's the nutrition approach that I recommend, that I teach, they have this cognitive dissonance where they just want to sort of keep pushing the buck aside and they don't want to take responsibility for their nutrition. And so at some point, it's about getting them to a place where they're ready to change. It's moving them into the looking zone. And so there's a lot of ways we can do that, but for me, a lot of us are motivated by either pain or pleasure or both, as Tony Robbins says. And so for me, I was motivated by this immense amount of pain. It was the tired and the brain fog and all this sort of stuff. And so I wanted to get away from that pain, and I wanted to get towards pleasure, which is having more energy, sleeping better, having regular bowel movements, kind of embarrassing, but these types of things, right? So I wanted to feel better. And so that was where my search started going for plant-based nutrition. I remember walking into the seminar room. I finally convinced myself to go to one of Michelle and David's seminars. And I walked in, here's Michelle looking bright. Looks like she's got an aura around her because she's just glowing so much. Her skin's bright, her eyes are clear, and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, wow, here's somebody who looks like the epitome of health. If I'm going to listen to somebody about a different approach to nutrition, this is the person I'm going to listen to. And so I sat down and I listened for an hour straight. As she was speaking, she was sharing stories. She had on a projector pictures of herself from her bodybuilding competitions and her photo shoots. And honestly, I've been in the fitness industry a long time. I've seen a lot of competitions, a lot of shape people can get into. Definitely at the upper level she was reaching, and her husband as well, same thing. And I thought, wow, there's two people, they're doing it. And she was talking raw foods, eating fruits and vegetables, and lots of berries and lots of greens, and she wasn't saying anything about eating animal products, any meat, dairy, or eggs. And I kept thinking to myself, wow, like, how's this possible? I thought maybe it's just them. maybe they're the only ones that can do it. And then she started showing the photos of her clients' results as well. She's a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and she started showing her clients' results. And her clients' results time after time after time, photo after photo. And as the photos continued, I got more and more impressed and more convinced that this could actually work for me. And so once I'd made that decision and I'd convinced myself, and she'd convinced me that it was possible, and from there, cut out all the meat from day one, which made a massive difference straight away. My digestive system started working well, my energy levels increased, brain fog disappeared straight away. And so that was amazing for me. That was a big turnaround. And so over 6 months, there was a transition there where I pulled the meat out, and so it was vegetarian. And then after 6 months, pulled the dairy out, and then energy levels increased even more, and everything just started getting better and better. And so I think from a behavioral standpoint, I think one of the key takeaways from that I'd like to share is that what I realized was that all of us have a certain amount of time that it takes us to make a shift in our behavior. But in the end, all of us are motivated by emotion. We all make our changes based on emotions and how we feel, and then we justify our decisions later with logic. And I had a similar conversation with Dom about this. And so for me, the emotion was coming from a very selfish place at the time. It wasn't necessarily help my clients more, get them healthier, or it wasn't necessarily for a place of, for the animals. I learned that later. Glad I did, really glad I did. I had some tears when I was watching Earthlings, believe me. That was not a nice film. But so it was the health for me first. And so I was motivated by the emotion to get myself out of feeling low energy, feeling tired, waking up, just feeling crap every day. I wanted to emotionally feel better, physically feel better. So I think that's really the key there, is that the realization I had was that a lot of us are making decisions based on emotion. We justify with logic later. So you guys are doing a great job with your outreach when you're out there. We're really trying to get into the hearts of people. And so for me, once I watched the Earthlings film, it was, for me, I thought, wow, that really got me. That's what solidified it for me. There was the potential that I could go back to eating, other foods, even though I felt so amazing already. So I think it's about figuring out what our reasons are, and then what the person across you, what their reasons are for changing their lifestyle, changing their behavior, changing their thoughts and the way they think about animals, the environment, and their health. Some people it's going to be health, as you probably noticed. Some people it's going to be the environment. Some people it's going to be animals, depending on what reaches their heart first. For me, it was health, because that was my industry for years. And I said before, there was a big challenge for me with something I had to let go. It was this ignorance of, I thought I knew it all. I'd studied nutrition for years, self-studied, and I thought I just knew everything there was to know. And it wasn't until that light came up, Michelle and David Nazaroff showed me the way, and I got to a place where he'd say, all right, well, it's time to put the ignorance aside. It's time to start talking to my clients and saying, hey, what I've been teaching you for years is maybe not necessarily optimal. And it's time to put the ego aside and say, hey, look, there's a potential I could be wrong here. Here's another approach. I'm feeling amazing. Here's my results. Why don't you try this? And so that's been powerful for me. That's been amazing. And so what I'd like to do for the rest of our catch up here, our chat, is just have a casual conversation with you guys. I did get some questions through from Dom here. I'm sure we're aware of quite a few of them, and we can cover those for you, absolutely. What I'd like to do is have a chat with you guys. Dom's put on amazing snacks and these things, so I'd like to have a chat, fire your questions over, and we can have a chat about that, and we can just go through them as we go along. How does that sound to you guys? Yeah. All right, perfect, awesome. Who would like to start? Who's got the most pressing question? I think you guys said you got to shoot off soon. Is that right?
Yeah. Let me know when you go. I guess for me, health isn't like a big issue. I still eat vegan junk food.
Love the vegan junk food.
And I guess if you were to compare, the vegan sausages and stuff like that often sell to people as an alternative to using animal products, compared to, say, a regular sausage or regular chicken nuggets, that sort of thing, would you say they are any healthier? Would you say there's a lot of oil in that or whatever, and it's not really healthy at all? Or, you know, is that clear? Is that a clear question?
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
With the, I think you're referring to the processed meats and
Yeah.
like broad range vegan junk foods like soy ice cream versus dairy ice cream.
Yeah, exactly.
Hamburger buns versus
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, for me, from a health perspective,
Yeah.
like say if we're taking the emotional side out of it, and we're just looking at, we use a scale of what's more optimal for our health and what's less optimal, and we sort of use a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
So some things are going to be more optimal. Say for example, if we take frozen bananas, which we're probably aware of, and we whip them up in a blender with some peanut butter and some dates and things, they come out pretty nice. So there's the optimal side of ice cream, right? So it's whole food, using whole food ingredients, and then we swing it over the other side and we have some soy ice cream made from refined soybeans and soybean protein and sugar and vanilla and a couple of additives.
A couple of emulsifiers and preservatives.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the pendulum swinging over the other side. So when it comes to these vegan junk foods, there's a lot. I think it's amazing. Like, there's a lot of variety now compared to even when I first got in 5 years ago. It's just exploded. It's been incredible. So it's great that I think there's a lot of alternatives. But from a health standpoint, I think it's important not to get confused that just because something doesn't have animal products in it doesn't mean that it's not unhealthy. Yeah. So for me personally, I just use that sliding scale. So when we look at the back of an ingredient label, and we have a look in, there's say more than like 7 ingredients, then we know that it's probably highly processed, because the more ingredients on the ingredient label, you're going to have like various preservatives added and things like that. And then you've got, say if you're looking at like a veggie burger, so some of them are great. Like there's the black bean and beetroot burger that's quite readily available.
Yeah.
So that's mostly just the black beans and beetroot and a couple of binders and things. So there's not that many ingredients in there if you look at the back. But if you look at say Beyond Meat's products, there might not be still not that many ingredients, but when you look at the way say the shredded chicken is produced, it's like the beans are heated very high, they drop down to a cold level, they're heated again, they're dropped down, and they do this. There's a lot of very fancy science there. But they effectively change something that was a soybean into something that's no longer, not even close to a soybean. And so the body doesn't recognize it, because the body recognizes a soybean because it's closely related to Mother Nature. But as soon as you change the form, your body won't recognize it in the same way. So I think, I don't know if it's kind of like, that's a broad answer to it without going into every single individual vegan junk food. But I think me personally, and what I recommend with clients, is that we just look at the ingredient label. And if you find that the ingredient labels are tricky to read, I can probably even put a simple video together on how I read the ingredient labels as well, and just pop that over your way so that you guys can get access to that.
Cool.
Yeah, does that answer it? Like, maybe not a lot of detail. Was there anything that popped up while I was talking that?
No, it does answer the question. Because I guess when I'm talking to somebody and I'm saying, well, you can eat healthier, like it's a healthier lifestyle, but I guess it depends on, the closer to whole food plant-based you are, the healthier you're going to be.
Sometimes that's a red light for people. When we're having those conversations with people that are consuming very animal protein rich foods, and then you say, you have that conversation and they're kind of open to it, and then you say, so you just got to cut that out and just go straight, just eat vegetables. Don't even do the fake meats and things. Like there's something about the fake meats that helps with the transition. It helps people go, okay, so I don't have to completely give up my sausages and so it's difficult, because you want to be able to give the cleanest information. You want to be able to give the healthiest option to this person that may not be at that point in time ready to hear the healthiest option. They want to hear the easiest option. They want to say, yes, I hate what's going on with the animals. My health is important to me, but don't go telling me I can't have any of it. So it's a tricky one with these foods.
You want to make it sound easy for people, right?
You do. You want to sell it.
It's almost
Yeah,
like
it's all
have
part of the sales pitch.
lasagna at home regularly. You want to say you can have lasagna at home if you want it.
Mm.
With, you know, Angel Foods cheese sauce and
Yeah.
the corn vegan mince, you know, and it's fine, whatever, because it's easy for people. It's like they don't even have to change, you know. So they still go to the same supermarket, buy the same products, and then you want to hit them with the big three: the environment, the health, and the animals, you know. And I guess
Yeah, it's a hard one.
it can be a bit murky, you know, when you preach the health sort of thing, and then you say have fried sausage, you know, instead of regular sausage, but
Yeah.
it's still going to give them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question that was sent over about comparing plant-based meats, the synthetic meats, to the to meat, to animal-based meat, and I think that comparison, I think again, like I would say that animal products swing over on the not optimal side of the things, and also the vegan processed food swings over on the less optimal. So if they're both in the same pot, then to me it's an equal substitute. Except the difference is that usually when people switch over to plant-based, they raise their intake of fruits and veggies, which makes a dramatic impact on their health.
True.
So instead of cooking up like, I don't know, eggs on toast for breakfast, then they're cooking up like, I don't know, if they get creative, like a tempeh hash or something. And so that's going to be that's going to have more of a dramatic effect on their health. And so if I was having that conversation and somebody said, oh, can I eat like these meat substitutes? I would say, of course you can. And you know, they're a great switch for what you're already doing, and they're going to get you on the fast track to going towards plant-based.
It's got to be easy to squeeze out a veggie sausage and a regular sausage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Take someone else at this video, right?
Just on the back of that question, what you were saying about the heating of soybeans and the cooling and heating, what are our body's responses to those processes?
Yeah. So say for example, with say we take fats, say if we take olive oil. So if we, I'll bridge this in a second. So say with olive oil is a cold room temperature oil. So it's supposed to be used in salads. It is a refined oil, as Dr. Michael Greger will talk about nutritionfacts.org. So, you know, you've got the olives and they get squeezed and then they get processed through chemicals and then eventually you end up with a bottle of olive oil. So already the product is processed. If you use it, any of the health benefits that are still left in it, if you put it on a fry pan and cook with it and heat it up, it turns into a trans fat. And trans fats are not recognized by the body in a similar way to how these soybeans that are heated up and cooled and heated and cooled, the olive oil when heated, when it becomes a trans fat, the body doesn't recognize it, it only recognizes it as a fat, but it doesn't know how to metabolize it like it would if you ate almonds, and so it stores it in your fat cells. So these are little cells and it stores it in there and then they get bigger and then eventually people gain body fat over time. So I would look at it in terms of that way. I wouldn't go as far to say as I know the chemical processes it goes through, but I would say that's how I would relate it from what I've looked at. Yeah. Are we helping being closer to helpful?
Yeah. Would you say the more processed something is, the less the body recognises it, so the less your body knows what to do with it, so it stores it in your fat cells or your arteries or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or extracts less nutrients from it because there's less nutrients in there anyway.
Absolutely. Your muscles and your fat cells are like reservoirs. So anytime something enters your body that your body doesn't know what to do with it, it will store it in that reservoir and it will sink to the bottom of that lake per se. And it will just sit there until your body can release it. And sometimes your body won't release it; it just sits in there. And people wonder why years later they end up with some sort of chronic illness of some sort. It's like a friend of mine in Sydney, she didn't know how it happened, but I could guess, and she came to me about 6 months ago when I was in Sydney, and she said, I've just been tested and I have extremely high levels of mercury in my body, of heavy metal poisoning. And so heavy metals come from a lot of different environmental factors, and one of them is fish, and she eats a lot of fish in her salads, a lot of tuna especially. And so sometimes it seems like this information is so old that I even forget to talk about it with people, because it's a minefield of information when it comes to nutrition and these things and what people are putting in their mouths. And so she's started a course, a plant-based nutrition course, but also she's started some supplements that help her body to excrete the heavy metals. So coming back to how do you say let go of their numbers, and how do you let go of the things that have built up in your system. So she wasn't aware of the heavy metal toxicity, even though she already experienced chronic fatigue, and she was very tired all the time. And when I was training her with PT, we had to be very careful, we didn't push her too far. And so with someone like that, she can have chronic fatigue for 2-3 years and the penny still hasn't dropped. And so the heavy metals keep coming in and there's no recovery. And no matter what we do, we're seemingly not getting a benefit. And it's because I like to think about it like the one big domino. It's like the time when you're speaking with somebody and you're seeing them information, you're talking to them, you're getting in their heart, and you're just like, nothing's working. And then all of a sudden, boom, like the penny drops and the one domino falls over, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm vegan, I'm doing it, you know? And they're ready to go. And so that's kind of like what I was talking about before, about that window of opportunity that opens up. And eventually, if we keep knocking on the door loud enough, eventually the door opens and they have that domino fall over, and then everything else falls into play. And that's that emotional thing that's gripped them. So Christine, for example, her chronic fatigue got so bad that she went to a naturopath and then got several tests done, and then the mercury showed up and these things. And so now she's, boom, pennies dropped, now she's on plant-based, now she's on some supplements that, if there's some supplements that will chelate, essentially just bind the heavy metals to them, and then they'll send them back through your system and out the other end. So, but there's also amazing herbs. I mean, everything's in nature. There's amazing herbs like basil and parsley are both known as heavy metal detoxes. So when you add those and chop them up into your salads, your body will, if it does have any heavy metals, it will help your body to clear them out. So if you have those every day, then eventually your body will do its thing. And it's like, there's a saying out there, if we give the body what it needs, it will do its job. But if we keep feeding it crap, it will function crap, and it will probably still hold on to crap. So.
Can I ask your opinion on eating for your blood type? There's this,
Oh yeah.
you know, and it's a discussion that's always thrown back at me for blood type and that, so I've got to eat meat. And yeah, I haven't the knowledge but I know it's very complex, but
Yeah.
I just wondered what your opinion was on that.
Yeah, the blood type diet was debunked a lot of years ago.
Was it? Yeah.
The book was such a seller because things don't always need to be backed up by science, because if they sound true, then they must be true.
Sound good on the cover.
What's that?
They sound good on the cover.
Yeah.
That is really the selling title.
And it was written by a doctor, so it must be true.
True.
Yeah, we forget doctors are humans just like us, and they make mistakes, and you know they can be making mistakes for a long time. So yeah, even if you go to nutritionfacts.org, and type in blood type diet, if you go into, you can go into blood type diet debunked and Google it.
Yeah, because I did do that, and there was just so much. And
So
I just
much.
thought, you know, it was so much time trying to just fish all the way through all this stuff. I just wondered what you thought.
Yeah, every now and then, I had a client a couple of months ago come in and say, "Oh, I eat fish because that's what my blood type, calls for," and I said to her, but if our DNA amongst us all is 99.99% the same as each other, then surely our blood type doesn't make a difference between how our body responds to different foods. There's a lot of factors that change the way our bodies respond to foods. Genetic factors and environmental factors and factors from our childhood and our digestive system back then. But in the end, most of the way our body processes food is quite unique to us. For example, last year I was eating a lot of beans, but then I realized that they were a little bit of a trigger, so I found a happy medium for how many beans my body can tolerate every day. You guys may have found that too. You find the level that's healthy for you. Plant-based or not plant-based, we still need to find that balance.
What would you say about someone who has Crohn's and if they're able to, if their body's able to handle a vegan diet?
Yeah, I know that some of you guys may be aware of the Vegan 8 by Brandi. She runs that website, and she was featured on, I think it was What the Health, but one of the recent docos. And her husband had Crohn's, and also had celiac disease, so quite challenging. And after a year on plant-based, she was able to reverse his Crohn's. Not the celiac, because that's a genetic thing. Wait. So.
Who is that?
Brandi Doming, and she's got the vegan8.com.
I'll put the link for that on the
Yeah, because my brother has Crohn's and like he keeps trying to go vegan. I keep encouraging it, but he loses a lot of weight, and I'm like, talk to a doctor, stop. Like I tell him to eat meat because he looks like he's gonna die. So like he wants to be vegan, but he just doesn't think he can handle it.
Yeah. I get that question more often than not. Is I switched to vegan, now I'm losing too much weight, I must have to eat meat again, which is unfortunate, but it's the content of the food that we're consuming. When I first walked away from that seminar, I already understood the caloric density of foods. I understood that some foods have a lot of energy in them, and some foods have very little energy, but they have a lot of bang for their buck in terms of antioxidants and very healthful. Say, for example, you have salad and lettuce and these things, it's not going to have a lot of calories in it, so chances are some of my body's so I knew that if I cut out the thousands of calories I was getting from animal products and I just replaced them with salad, that I'd lose a lot of weight. So I was replacing it with sweet potato and brown rice and dates and bananas and plenty of fruit, different foods that I knew would help sustain my body weight. And I think a lot of men in particular, they tend to struggle when they're switching to plant-based, because a lot of guys, sometimes they feel emasculated when they start losing weight, and they're like, oh no, how's this fit with my identity, and how do I feel about this? And sometimes there's going to be a lot of struggling going on there, and then it just shows up as, oh, I'm losing weight, I don't want to do it anymore. So does that help answer your question? Yeah, I've seen quite a few people that are reverse Crohn's. On a similar note, when I was in Sydney in 2015, I had a girl by the name of Emily. She was a pro basketball player, and she came to me and she said, I don't know if you can help me. I'm really struggling right now. I've been put on insulin injections and pills for my diabetes, which has been a recent thing that's happened in my life. Recently created that. She said, my energy's shot. I want to have kids soon. I have a wedding coming up in 6 months. I also was on a Duramine drug, which had me lose 20 kilos of weight in 12 weeks, and then I gained 30 kilos in 10 weeks after I got off the drug, prescribed by my doctor. So yeah, she was really struggling. And to top it off, she said, oh, by the way, I have endometriosis and PCOS, which affects more than 1 out of 10 women now. I think it's more like 3 out of 10. Unfortunately, it's rising, which is scary. She had a lot of stuff going on. And I said to her, well, honestly, I'm not sure if I can help, but I'll do my best to steer you in the right direction. And so we started working together. The first thing I said to her was, go to your doctor and ask him if it's okay if you go on whole food plant-based. If it is, have him monitor your insulin. Because as her body would adjust to plant-based and heal itself, her insulin would stabilize and she'd need less of the drug to allow her body to be healthy. So she got the all clear from her doctor. We started working together. We strength trained 3 times a week. She went for a fast walk 3 times a week as well, so 6 days of exercise. Switched straight into whole food plant-based, gave it a real good shot. She was very dedicated, coming from the pro basketball player background. She had that mindset. She was able to put her mindset to it. She had the goal in mind, the wedding coming up in 6 months. And she had the pain of endometriosis, which is very debilitating for a lot of women. I have some friends that have it, as you guys probably know someone too, as we all tend to. And so she had a pain level about a 9 out of 10, 8 or 9 out of 10, so it was really uncomfortable for her. And so we were dealing with that, but as we worked together, we got 12 weeks in and she lost 10 kilos, which is amazing. But more importantly, as we got 3 months in, towards the 12 week and then a little bit further, her doctor had to pull her off all of the insulin and diabetes medication, all of it gone. Her diabetes had effectively reversed itself in such a short period of time, which I thought was incredible. And she got to her wedding day, she was fitted in the dress, she felt amazing, she felt confident, she walked down the aisle, felt like $1 million, and that was the most important thing. She didn't reach her goal weight, but she felt like $1 million, and that was the most important thing for her. And to top it off, her endometriosis and PCOS went from the 8 out of 10 pain down to a 3 out of 10. So just incredible what people can do when not only they set their mind to something, but they adopt a approach that allows your body to self-heal. And so I wanted to share that a little bit on the Crohn's disease side, because it's a chronic illness. And degenerative disease, and it's the same as diabetes. These are some of these things we can reverse. Sometimes the body gets too far over the other side of the pendulum and it can't self-heal anymore. Its ability to self-heal from that disease is kind of broken. I don't like to say that none of us are broken. Like I say, we're all perfect and we're whole. Sometimes we've been neglecting the body for so long and can't do a thing. But hey, never give up hope. There's always that light at the end of the tunnel.
What's your view on like crops and grains? A good friend of mine is paleo, follows a paleo diet, and she says, in her opinion, like grains and crops are just as bad for you as eating meat. She eats organic meat. So what's your view on like grains and things?
Grains?
Yeah, like bread and
pasta. I think. Well, Dr. Michael Greger has a really good book called How Not to Die. I don't know if anybody's read it. Yeah, it's a good read. He has a whole section on whole grains in there. And from the research I've read outside of it, we found that the problems really started occurring when people started refining whole grains. So, say Weet-Bix. I had a client come in last week, and I said, "What did you have for breakfast?" And she said, "I had Weet-Bix with soy milk." I was like, "Well, I guess the soy milk is okay, but the Weet-Bix is, these marketing companies have become so clever at convincing us that foods are healthy for us by using these catchphrases like natural and healthy, and they can use whole food ingredients, like Nutrigrain, high protein, whatever. They use these buzzwords to sell us on these ideas.
4.5 stars out of 5 or something.
Yeah, the health tech, which means makes no sense and is funded by corporates. So to answer your question, I can easily send you the research, but the whole grains are definitely very healthy. Dr. Michael Greger recommends that we have, I believe it's at least half a cup of whole grains a day. He's got a Daily Dozen app that has the 12 ingredient or 12 foods that we should have every day to sustain optimal health. I think it's a really cool little app. It's got a little tick box. You can just tick box as you go along throughout your day and make sure you're ticking it off. And it's called the Daily Dozen. Yeah.
Dr. Michael Greger.
Dr. Michael Greger.
This is Daily Dozen, that's what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
So when you talk about whole grains, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. Of some whole grains. So most of us are familiar with wheat as a whole grain, and then we've got oatmeal, which is also really common, and then we've got the least common ones like barley and rye. We've got quinoa, which is more of a seed, but a lot of people, it falls into that whole grain category. Buckwheat, I don't know if I mentioned that, but so there's a lot of different whole grains out there. Amaranth is another one as well. And all these are super healthy. I mean, they contain a lot of healthful ingredients. They contain the fiber, they contain the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all the good stuff. Say for example, rice. Rice is a whole grain, still considered as a whole grain. And you look at most of us have either heard of Dr. Esselstyn and the China study, and a lot of our Asian counterparts, when they were living off a traditional diet, they were eating mostly rice and vegetables, and they would use meat as a topping, as a garnish, not as a main dish. And in a lot of cases, the traditional farmers didn't even add meat to their dishes. The Okinawans in Japan live the longest out of any population group most of us have heard, and their diet is primarily sweet potato with some rice, and that's the bulk of their diet. There's not really much else in it. They have a little bit of fish, but that's very, very sparse. A lot of our Asian countries, they've got, when they were eating their traditional diets before they started eating more of a Western diet, they have had very, very low rates of disease and illness and these things. Yeah, good question. Thanks.
How do you know, so I don't know if this is just because obviously I've been brought up in a way that when there's something wrong with you, if you're ill or something, you take medicine for it and then you get better. And I was at actually at the Bali Vegan Festival, and I remember there was a woman talking about how a raw vegan diet, how she attributed her overcoming cancer to a raw vegan diet, overcoming breast cancer to a raw vegan diet. And I used to be quite sceptical because I suppose it's just not how I was conditioned. When people said that, I thought they were just kind of, I never really believed it. I just kind of thought, well, no, how can you do that? We've got modern medicine to help you do that. I didn't think that a reversible in diet could really change it. And then obviously I went vegan and felt a million times better. But it's still difficult to know how people, like, it's still difficult for me to really kind of get a hold of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's difficult to know like what to believe when there's so much information. How do I know what to believe? Yeah.
I think that's a fair comment. It was you know what, the nutrition world and the disease reversal world. You know, I was talking with Guy, who is one of the trainers in the studio that I'm running from at the moment, and he follows almost an opposite approach to nutrition as I do. So the other day I said to him, he said, oh, you know, I saw this guy and all he eats is meat, and he thinks he's really healthy, and apparently he's the healthiest guy on the planet. He has everything he needs from meat and these things. And he was talking about how, you know, he's in great shape and these things, and he's, you know, a strong guy. And I said to him, yeah, you know, isn't it interesting to see that people from a lot of different approaches can still get what seems like a positive result. And I always think there's more to a lot of the stuff than meets the eye. I think that it can be tough when, say, we're not in a position where we're directly influencing the health of other people and helping them, say, reverse illness. I think that first we have to believe in the stories that we hear, and I think, you know, a lot of us can't just choose to just believe any old story. We want to believe a story that seems like it's credible from a credible person, that it has some research behind it, or at least the approach has research. So honestly, like, I think when it comes to disease reversal and these things, the best thing is to keep an open mind, but also be critical, and to be aware that there are people out there that are reversing diseases on, say, paleo and these things. Sometimes people get results not because of what they do, but in spite of what they do. So it may not be necessarily the paleo that's helping them reverse the disease. It may be the fact they just removed 80% of junk food out of their diet.
Yeah.
Which is what I see when clients first start with me. The first thing they do with me is they remove out their junk food. We don't always switch them on a plant-based straight away. Sometimes people are like, wow, that change is massive. Just the fact of exercising 3 times a week is a big change. So that would be sort of my thoughts on that anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does help.
I think Dr. Michael Greger's book will be really cool because he has a lot of case studies in there of people that have reversed illnesses, and a lot of really, really, really cool stuff. Yeah, the geek in me usually gets excited when I see it.
So does all oil change into trans fat when you heat it?
There's 2 types of oils that don't change into trans fat. They're what we call high temperature cooking oils. So there's coconut oil and macadamia nut oil. They're the 2 main ones that come to mind. Okay. It's on a similar note to the sweetener question. You know, if we're looking for a low calorie or like a healthy sweetener, there seems to be two main options if we're not going for refined sugar type versions. There's date sugar, which is just pulverized dried dates, and they just come out like a granular sugar type product, and you can add that to baking. They're really good for that. And then you've got xylitol, which for some reason seems really neutral and very, like, when you eat it, it still gives you that sweet taste. It is produced in a lab, but for some reason it's very close to, I can get a little bit techie here, but the risk of sounding geeky. But there are these amino acids, and that's just a word for the building blocks of nature. So when we eat a bean, it has various amino acids in it that make it a bean. And so this sweetener is made out of a couple of amino acids, so the body will just, for some reason, it seems to treat it quite neutral. So xylitol and date sugar tend to be a couple of...
And what's better about date sugar? Is it more bound up with the fibre?
Yeah, so the date sugar is just made out of the dates that have been dried, and then they've been taken a step further, freeze-dried, and then they've been pulverized, and then they end up as a granule. So they haven't actually taken anything from the date. It's still
Right.
still a whole
It's got like
thing.
maybe a slower release or something, so you don't get that sugar spike.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point there. When I would eat, say, just say the other day I had a coffee. I was down at that new vegan cafe down the road there in Eddington, very nice. And I had a coffee, just had some raw sugar in it, and about half an hour later I had a bit of a spike in energy, and I dropped a little bit because my body's not really used to the refined sugar. And whereas the last time I went there, I got one of their baked goods, and what happens is when you eat food with, say, a refined sugar product, or when you eat more of a whole food combined with a refined food like sugar, what your body does is it goes and it combines in your stomach, and it slows the digestion of the entire food that's in your belly. So sometimes it's not about looking at things through one keyhole, sometimes it's about looking at it through a more of a holistic view when it comes to nutrition. So just I guess keeping in mind that if you're eating foods together and you're combining them, they're just digesting very slowly in your stomach, and so you're going to get more of a sustained energy release.
Nun Amen Ra, right? You have 23 hours a day of fasting, like leveraging the body's natural system, like, it's any time you get sick or something, first thing you sort of do is, I can't eat. Body's way of kind of healing itself. And then he's also talking about the release of growth hormone factor during that time, which also sounds really interesting, and obviously his results are phenomenal, right? Like, he's the strongest man in the world when it comes to deadlifting.
Yeah, it's powerful records,
Yeah. So, and amazing physique, and seems to have it all down pat. So I was wondering, his diet, what do you think, first of all, about the fasting for 23 hours? And then also he's talking about, like, basically beans, grains. He said he doesn't have so many of the sort of fruits, like, watermelon or what have you, because it takes up a lot of space, and it's like 9% water. So he's looking at very nutrient dense foods during that sort of hour or whatever. And then of course the strength training to go with it is
I came across Doc, and I started reading it, and it seemed like it was pretty good. He was talking about healing abilities quicker and all these things, so it was sort of a lot of green lights going up for me. And so I started reading his content, and I believe you can only get his books through donations. So I was donated some dollars, he emailed me the books, read through them. I did really like his book, Evolutionary Nutrition. Talks a lot about the research through the last million or so years through the human genome, or through the ape genus, going through the early apes and what they ate, and then Neanderthals and what they ate, and then early humans and what they ate, and then the current genome, which is roughly 200,000 years old, which has subsisted for just about the 99% of the time on plants and fruits and things. So that was a great book, actually, great read. And that's why earlier when I was saying that our bodies are all unique and they're individual in the way they digest foods and what they need, I've always been of a leaner body type, and so my body does require a higher amount of food than somebody perhaps who's naturally always just more rounded. And so perhaps Dr. Nun Amen Ra's approach works for him because maybe his body's just geared that way and it can really tolerate 1 meal a day very well, and his digestive system may be fine with it. I found that when I was eating 1 meal a day and packing in all this food into one meal, my digestive system was not fast enough to digest the food, and so I almost ended up with the symptoms that I had even when I was eating meat, because all the food, all the plant matter was just getting packed in, and then it was just getting stuck.
So what do you recommend to eat before and after training? For example, for a 15 years old?
Yeah, what sort of training are you doing?
Football.
Three times a week plus Saturday and Sundays games and school sports and.
Yeah, I find that with growing bodies, so usually we stop growing at about 20 or so, but from that point prior, it seems to be more of a question of getting in enough food, of the right types of food, as opposed to creating a window around your training times. What's more important is the 24-hour window that happens before and after the training day itself. A lot of athletes have known this, and that's why they say they'll carbo load before they'll go on a marathon or something like that on a Friday night before they do a run on a Saturday or something like that. So yeah, it has a lot to do with the types of foods that you're eating throughout the day, and it has a lot to do with the amount of food that you're eating. That will help you recover far more faster than, a protein shake before or after or anything like that. But if you're curious, I cover a lot of the types of foods to sustain growth and recovery in the book that's free. I put it out as free a couple months ago.
Right, so we just need to grab that. It's an ebook.
Ebook, yeah. You can just download it off my site.
Cool. So I'll grab that information.
Yeah, cool.
Because the question that I had was around that. Sorry, I'm just want to take it back to some of the questions that we're getting asked, and a lot of it is around this sort of stuff. People that are saying a vegan diet is not going to sustain me. I've tried eating just plant foods. There's not enough food there. I'm thinking of the guys that I've spoken to. They're like, no, I eat a lot of food and I just can't get enough in. And also sportsmen, obviously athletes, talking about the types of food. So what should we be recommending? Again, I'm always thinking in terms of our outreach during the cubes, and this small window that we have, this small window of opportunity to talk to people, so that we don't lose them and give them the wrong responses. How do we respond to those sorts of questions?
Yeah, for the athlete or the man who's concerned about looking, I find most of the clients I work with, like the story with Emily. As soon as I put my female clients who want to lose weight on whole food plant-based, almost right away they start losing weight. So for females, for 90% of them, just going on whole food plant-based will automatically have them lose weight. And that's not something that they want to do, and they want to maintain their weight and not drop weight. Then a quick sort of answer that I would have is have a look in your pantry and see what sort of foods you already have in there. Like I would probably more so like just answer it with a question, like what sort of foods do you like to eat that are in your pantry? And I would, once they told me, I would probably say like, okay, we'll just eat more of those. Sometimes it's the simplest answer. Sometimes it's turning a question into a question that's pretty helpful. But say if I was going to say how to, then I'd be looking at more like just saying, well, we're just wanting to eat more pastas and grains, rice, potatoes, beans, these types of things. And most people eat bread in a traditional Western diet. So we just look at what are people already eating in their diet right now in a Western diet, and then just highlighting those. Because we don't want to make it hard on people and say, oh, we need to be eating all this new foreign stuff. Like tofu, what's tofu?
Superfoods that you think are good that we can add in smoothies or in salads or stir fries. Sorry, that's a problem.
It's a long question, but I get
Yeah.
the gist. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I love the question. I also think that the real question is that what we're feeding ourselves as adults should be a mirror for what we would feed children. And so Dr. Michael Greger talks a lot about, and coming back to the Daily Dozen, he talks a lot about a lot of adults don't feed themselves as well as they would their kids. And so what a lot of vegan parents find from the stories that I've read and from vegan parents that I've spoken to is that the more healthful they eat, the more their kids want to eat healthful. And as well, a lot of us don't realize that our taste buds actually change in a week. So if we're eliminating certain food groups and we're adding in new food groups, our taste buds actually change, and then what happens is you crave more of those new foods. And I noticed that with myself, with just eating more fruits and vegetables. So I think, to come back to the superfood question, superfood is almost like a word that implies that, and it's not a bad question, but it does imply, and it's used a lot in food marketing, to sell certain foods like chia seeds. Yeah, they're really helpful for us, but so are soybeans, and so are almonds, and so are walnuts. Walnuts contain a lot of omega-3, as do flax seeds. If you're going to consume flax seeds, and these things are in the Daily Dozen as an example. So what I would say to parents is just give them the Daily Dozen. They're going to be super healthy. They're going to get the calcium. They're going to get the omega-3s. They're going to get the fiber, the vitamins. They're going to get everything they need to grow to be healthy. For example, it's recommended that you have a seaweed salad once a week so you can get your iodine up. But you only need it once a week. Any more than that, it becomes a little bit more detrimental. Again, selenium. You can either take a selenium supplement or you can have one Brazil nut a day to get your selenium needs. Omega-3, you can either eat walnuts or you can eat mulched flaxseed. If you eat the flax seeds whole, your body can't break them apart. They're little packages. Mother Nature's done quite a good job at closing those up. So if you eat the ground flaxseed meal, pretty low cost from the baking aisle of the supermarket, you get the omega-3 from that as well, along with lignans, which are being shown to help prevent prostate cancer dramatically in men. So they've got some very, very cool health benefits. So I would say that some of those superfoody type foods are actually on the Daily Dozen there. And I think a simple answer would be, there's a lot of creative ways to package fruits and vegetables. I'm not a parent, so I can't really go into kids and how they eat and these things. I can just go off what my clients tell me and my clients who are vegan and these types of things. So I would generally suggest that the more the parents are eating healthful, the more the kids are going to follow suit.
There's lots of kids eating meat, aren't there? And there's lots of bad food with kids. They're eating chicken nuggets and fries.
Big movement towards just looking at the gut health as being a predeterminant for almost any ailment.
What they've found is that we actually have more connections in our gut and our heart than we do in our brain, and that they actually communicate with each other all the way through. And so when we talk about the link between mental health and diet, it's a really unrecognized area that's only just started to gain traction. And again, Michael Greger, I'm quite a fan of him, so I come back to his stuff a lot because it's mostly research backed. Well, it is research backed, so he's got nutrition facts. What a lot of science has just started to come out with is that we have these bacteria that live in our guts called the microbiome, and it's an entire system that exists symbiotic to us. And they say we have roughly 3 to 5 kilos of bacteria living on our bodies all the time. And these are not bacteria like grab a doorknob and oh no, we're going to get sick. These are bacteria that we need them just as much as they need us. And evolution has provided this symbiotic relationship between the two of us where we essentially eat the food, and then whatever food we eat, they produce different chemicals that have us feel a certain way. And even not just our emotions, but say for example, if we eat a greasy food, then some of our bacteria in our gut dies, and then that has an effect where there's death, and then the bowels they're inefficient, they're not working very well. Versus if we eat, say, some berries and some apples, then what our microbiome does is it releases chemicals like serotonin and various endorphins that make us feel good. And so it sort of upregulates our body. So, and what they've also found is that meat eaters who, they eat a meat-based diet, people who eat a meat-based diet, what they've found is that 90% of their bacteria in their gut is the type of bacteria that is really good at breaking down meat, but also what they've linked is that the amount of that bacteria you have in your gut is linked to various chronic illnesses. They've already directly linked. If you have this bacteria, it's prevalent in your gut, and it's very active, you're going to get this type of issue happen later on. And the reverse can be said as well. They've looked at the microbiome, the bacteria living in vegans' guts, and it's completely different. It's the type of bacteria that's great at breaking down plants, but it's also the type of bacteria that's fantastic at reversing illness, healing the body, and producing chemicals that help optimize our health and help prevent illness and disease and these types of things. So it's some really cool stuff. There is a company that I looked into very recently where they've combined nutrition with artificial intelligence. Now, I don't know if they're recommending vegan diets, so I won't go into too much because I haven't been able to finish the research, but they're using artificial intelligence to examine what your blood is doing, to examine what's coming through your bowels, and then spit out a nutrition plan that will help reprogram your microbiome, which can help you prevent disease, any disease that you may be headed towards, and sort of course correct. So I'm interested to see where that heads over time as well.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I did want to address a couple of questions. A quick question about B12. And so B12 is not too difficult. When I was working on a dairy farm, unfortunately it was actually my first full-time job out of high school. Saw a lot. You can't erase those memories. But when I would work on the farm, I'd look out over the grass paddocks, and they had these big trucks coming, and they'd roll in and they'd be spraying all the stuff all over the grass, and it was called nitrogen. Now, nitrogen is really good for helping grass grow, but it's really bad for the bacteria that live inside the soil that actually eat the soil and produce B12. So there's these little microscopic bacteria, and so what happens is the cows will eat the grass, and the bacteria has already produced the B12, and it's sitting in the soil. So when these cows eat the grass, they're getting some soil into their gut too, and then the B12 that's in the soil goes from their gut into their tissue, and so that's where they hold the B12. And then when some people eat the cow, they get the B12. So that's a secondary way to get B12. The first way is, I have a friend Jai in Sydney, and he owns a gym. He's vegan as well. And what he does is he buys organic mushrooms and stuff like this that still has some dirt on it, and he gets his B12 in that way. He doesn't say he eats dirt, but there's some dirt on his mushrooms. And the
nutritional yeast, and then we've also got the B12 supplement as well. Do you know if Vegemite works as does it have much B12?
I've looked at it. I don't think it has much B12 in it, but it's a little bit here and there, and it all adds up in the end. And I've seen a lot of research that has been showing that the entire population is actually B12 deficient, and some vegans are probably less B12 deficient than the general population, because they're more aware of the fact that there could be a deficiency. B12 is very well stored in the body, so it can take many years for it to deplete. But if we're eating B12 fortified foods, a lot of the soy milks and these things, a lot of the plant-based milks are fortified, some of the cereals and nutritional yeast and these types of things. We're taking supplements now and again as well that will top up here and there. If you're having a bit of dirt like Jai, then you're gonna be fine with your B12 there.
I talked about vitamin D as well. I didn't think that was too much of a problem as long as you got some sun and stuff. But is that a problem on a vegan diet?
I would say people would get more vitamin D on a vegan diet than they would just eating a regular. But sunlight is the key one, and then we've got algae-based supplements as another one. There's not too many ways to get a lot of vitamin D other than the sunlight and the vitamin D supplement. not all vitamin D supplements are synthesized out of algae. The other ones are out of like sheep's wool and stuff like that. So.
And omega-3s, how important are they?
They're pretty important. I think it looks like they're less important than what they once thought. I think that the omega-3 deficiency side of things became a really great, like when omega-3s were discovered, and they were discovered as an important essential fatty acid in these things, a lot of supplement companies got on selling fish oils, and they made a lot of money out of, you know, telling people they really needed omega-3. If people do need omega-3, and generally people do need to be aware of it, but not nearly as much omega-3 as what we originally once was marketed. It's issues that the 90s amount of fish oil has probably been sold over the years.
What about the connection, like there's lots of people that think about the connection between soy and estrogen.
I saw that one, yeah.
Yeah, instead of like, but not milk, why would you? Yeah, but I was talking to someone today, like a guy, and he's like, oh yeah, I don't do soy because of the estrogen, and I was like, have you read anything about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're drinking breast milk, for goodness
Yeah,
sake.
exactly. But I know there's like, you know, plant-based, there's like phytoestrogens that like equal it out, but I was just wondering if you've got a real clear, quick answer that you can give them.
Yeah, you're right. They do contain phytoestrogens. The phytoestrogens have been shown to prevent breast cancer, and they're also not handled like other estrogens in the body.
Yeah.
The estrogen your body creates on its own is your body will always use that estrogen as a primary, and the phytoestrogen that's floating around your bloodstream is used to help clear out, like it's used to, I don't exactly know like what it does in the body other than that the studies show that it helps prevent breast cancer and these types of things.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere, but I can't say, so that makes it sound really shitty. Like,
Okay.
I remember I read it somewhere. Like that, you know, like it can act as estrogen if it needs to, but it can also like decrease your levels of estrogen as well if you need to. It needs to as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I can't remember.
Nutritionfacts.org has a whole lot of stuff on it, and a lot of research on it, and it shows that in, say, Japan, they have a really, really low rate of breast cancer, and they've always eaten a lot of heavy soy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you look at the ingredients on a soy milk pack, and probably oat milk and almond milk and all of the plant milks, you know, there's filtered water, and then there's sugars, and then there's, you know, there's sort of a list of ingredients in this milk that we're drinking, and we're sort of talking about, you know, whether that's something to be concerned about, because for us, milk, you know, for all of us that have come from drinking dairy milk, it's just milk, and it comes from a cow, and it's, you know, it's just simple, it's one ingredient. I mean, you kind of take out all the other stuff, but when you see it written on a packet that there's all these different ingredients, are they okay for us?
It comes back to the almost right full circle from when we started, right?
Yeah.
So is there more than say 7 ingredients on the packet, and even if there's less, and we're looking at that breakdown, we're saying, okay, well, what's actually in it? Is there some, you know, filtered oat flour, for example, in oat milk, and then there's some refined cane sugar, and then they add a little bit of like usually soybean oil or something.
Yes.
So the soybean oil and the raw sugar, they're not like amazingly healthy for us. They're not healthy for us really at all. But when you take that like small 250 ml serving of the milk that you have with this tiny little drop in your coffee or something, it's so insignificant compared to everything else that's going in your diet that I don't really think it's, you know, unless you're drinking liters and liters of this stuff, it's not going to make a difference to your health.